And this is a huge, huge win for the people, and again shows us the power of our collective voices. Hey y'all, Jay Nice on the mic. In this video, I wanted to talk about some big wins. I have 6 big wins against big tech and 1 additional win that's big tech adjacent. But I wanted to talk about these wins to inspire us and to remind us that our voices matter. In my newest book, Rise and Resist, I have a chapter. The last chapter of the book is called Technology as Resistance. And I talk about how technology can be used as a tool for resistance. The ancestors did not have the technology tools that we have today. So even though everything that's happening feels very daunting and feels really overwhelming and feels insurmountable, I just want to remind us of our power. And I think that my book, Rise and Resist, does just this. It reminds us of each of our power, the power that we have and the power that those who came before us had. So let's talk about win number 1. So last year it was reported that there was going to be a data center built in PG County, Maryland. Shout out to anybody watching from the DMV area, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Prince George's County is a part of Maryland, and there were plans set to build a data center there. I guess the data center was going to be built at the site of the old Landover Mall. I used to live in the DMV area, and I remember Landover Mall, but I guess that area was where the data center was going to be built. And there was a petition that went around that got over 20,000 signatures of people that said, no, we do not want you to build the data center here. And just like many other cities and towns and countries in the US, there are plans to build tons of data centers to keep up with the vast and growing demand because of our AI usage. And so PG County is a predominantly Black county. And they pushed back and they said, you are not going to build a data center in our county. And they pushed back and they won. So as of right now, the plans to build the data center in PG County have been paused. Now we have to keep our eyes and ears on this story, because pause doesn't necessarily mean it won't happen. But what this story illuminates for us, or what it should illuminate, is the power of our voices. The people came together and said, no, we are not going to allow this to happen, and it didn't. So it just reminds us how powerful we actually are, especially when we come together. Win number 2. In February of 2026 of this year, it was announced that Discord, the famous platform Discord, that they would be using a Peter Thiel backed software company. And the company was essentially using facial recognition on photos and facial recognition technology to identify people, compare photos on the government watch list to people's faces. And I want to read to you what it says. The technology was going to compare your photo to government watch list photos and screen it against, quote unquote, 14 categories of adverse media, from terrorism to espionage. But because of public backlash, they ended their contract with the company. So this is a huge win for the people that just happened last month. And it happened because people are not fans of Peter Thiel. People are not fans of Palantir and any Palantir adjacent organizations, because we know that these are all tools for mass surveillance and to take our data, take our information and use it against us, which will cause further harm to people who are in marginalized communities. And I'm excited because I'll be talking specifically about data privacy, data security, cybersecurity in the next couple months, because I'm working on a huge project that I'm going to share with y'all on the channel soon. But this is a huge win for the people. What this situation shows us again is that our voices are powerful and matter. And when we come together and say no, these corporations have no choice but to listen to us. Another huge win, win number 3. So after the Super Bowl, and if you haven't seen my video about Bad Bunny and the Super Bowl, you can check it out. I've linked it above. But after the Super Bowl, there was a lot of backlash because there was apparently this Ring commercial where Ring showed how their technology could be used to like link a bunch of Ring cameras to find a missing dog. And people were basically like, wait, if Ring can connect all of the cameras to find a missing dog, imagine what it could do to surveil people. So Ring had this partnership with Flock, which is a surveillance company, and essentially they advertised how Ring would be used in this partnership with Flock to find the missing dog. People on social media were like, no, this is not it, because so many people have Ring cameras. I don't trust Ring, but even if you don't use Ring, you don't have a Ring, you don't trust it, your neighbor does, and you can't stop your face from being seen on someone's Ring camera, right? And so I'm so glad that the people spoke up, and because of all of the backlash, Ring decided to end their partnership with Flock indefinitely. And this is a huge, huge win for the people, and again shows us the power of our collective voices. Win number 4, I wrote an article about this, which I will link below, but at the end of 2025, Spotify was getting a ton of backlash. Spotify over the years has gotten a lot of backlash because allegedly they don't pay their artists well. And then in the summer of 2025, it was being reported that the CEO of Spotify had invested, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars in some sort of defense technology company. And so the most recent wave of backlash came in the fall when it was announced that Spotify, among other companies, right? So Spotify wasn't the only company, but Spotify had ICE ads running on Spotify, which were ICE recruitment ads to get more people to work for ICE. And people were mad about it, and people were like, this is not right. And people spoke out, and there were mass calls to boycott Spotify. In January of 2026, it was announced that Spotify, because of public pressure, decided that they were going to discontinue or end the ICE recruitment ads. This is, again, a huge win for the people and a reminder that our voices are powerful as individuals, but as a collective, we have immense power. So win number 5, I think I said there were 6 wins, but there's 5 wins. So win number 5 is that more than 2 million people, I believe 2.5 million people, it was reported this week that 2.5 million people in the last several weeks have deleted their ChatGPT after the news spread that ChatGPT or OpenAI essentially gave the Department of Defense unfettered access to surveil citizens and to use their technology for autonomous weapons. Anthropic had initially declined, but OpenAI was right there to swoop in and say that they were going to take on the deal. So this is a huge win because even though we can argue that Anthropic has its own, Anthropic's hands are not clean, right? Anthropic is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, right? I think we should not trust any large language models or any of these AI companies. But Anthropic stood up and said, this is not how our technology should be used. We are gonna say no. And that is really a powerful decision made on their part. And the fact that they did that meant that those 2 million or 2.5 million people who had ChatGPT downloaded on their phone were now downloading Claude, and Claude rose to the #1 spot globally, I believe, on the app stores. This is a huge win. Again, I'm not saying Anthropic is an angelic company by any means, but I was also one of those people. I was paying for ChatGPT and I discontinued my membership, and I don't know, I haven't decided whether I'm going to completely stop using Chat. I think I'll use it for very like insignificant things, like if I need a recipe or something. I was making bread the other day and I was like, what's the recipe for this? I'll use it for that, but for everything else, I don't trust ChatGPT by any means. So this was a huge win for the people. Number 6, and I say this isn't 6 per se because this isn't against a big tech company per se. So at the end of February, it was being reported that ICE agents were exiting Minnesota. Minnesota apparently went from 4,000 ICE agents that were in the city to 400. So this is a huge win because of obvious reasons. ICE has been terrorizing people across the country, but also because I just read an article that said that ICE was using mass surveillance tools to track, monitor, and surveil citizens. Not only that, because we know that, but that ICE had developed their own tool to mass surveil citizens. Now, one of my favorite people, Tressie McMillan Cotton, said in a video that even if we abolish ICE, which is the goal, right? The goal is to completely abolish and get rid of ICE. We have to also understand that abolishing ICE is not where our advocacy should end. And once ICE is abolished, if ICE is abolished, there will still be the systems and structures in place that allowed an institution like ICE to even exist, right? We are not necessarily getting rid of the apparatus that made ICE possible. We are just sort of getting rid of one aspect of this oppressive system, but it's not getting rid of the system or not dismantling the system. So we have to think more, I guess, strategically or more generally about how we're going to address the problem, which is a systemic issue. And it doesn't begin and end with ICE. ICE is an institution that began, I believe, in the early 2000s. And these problems with mass surveillance and surveilling citizens and surveilling Black people in marginalized communities has existed for decades, right? People in the 60s, part of the Black Panther Party, were being surveilled, right? Many of us understand COINTELPRO and J. Edgar Hoover and the ways that the government has been mass surveilling its citizens and people that are outspoken and that speak up about civilian rights and whistleblowers and things like that. So the surveillance and the systemic harm didn't start with ICE, and it won't end once ICE is abolished, if it is abolished. So we have to think about what it will take to truly dismantle the system and the structures that created ICE or allowed ICE to continue in the first place, if that makes sense. So I think these are exciting wins, and we should think about these wins, especially during moments like this where it's a lot of stuff going on. It feels like every time we turn around, there's some mass surveillance happening, some huge hacking, our information, our data, this and that. Is a lot. But there are wins, and I believe that wins should be celebrated. There is some news that I just heard that I want us to keep our eyes on, right? So I just heard that, or I read this story about how apparently Proton, which is an email service that I use, they worked with the FBI to hand over information related to a Stop Cop City email account that was created on the Proton platform. So I think this is completely wrong because Proton is a Swiss-based company. What are y'all doing working with the FBI? You don't even have to, right? So I think that we need to, as citizens, speak out. I do not want to continue to use Proton if they're in cahoots or if they're partnering with the FBI. And if the purpose of using Proton is privacy, if you can't even get that from Proton, people are going to migrate to other platforms. So I think we need to be sharing this story, speaking out about it more, and keeping our eye on it. But I hope that with public pressure, Proton will not continue to do things like this in the future. And if they do, hey, there are other companies out there that people will flock to instead. So that is where I'm going to leave off today's video. I hope that it gave you a sense of some hope, some excitement, some sort of just like inspiration during these very dark and trying times, that as a collective, we are so powerful and we have to continue to use our voices to speak up. If you want to learn more about the long legacy of Black resistance and how technology can be used as a tool of resistance, I talked about it in my new book, Rise and Resist, which is available wherever books are sold. So thank y'all so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I will see y'all in the next video.